Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Wolfpack Gaming Podcast. I have a special guest here tonight, Mav from Fun Speculation. How you doing tonight, Mav?
Oh, doing well. Thanks for having me. Proud to be your second guest now on your new show. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to having some fun, some good conversations and stuff.
Thank you so much, man. You are officially my second guest, and let me tell you, I had Kay Asante on as my first guest, and it was a great conversation to get to know him and his background. And that's kind of like the same, philosophy. If you'll say that I wanna take with you, Mav. I want to get to know who Mav is. You've completely come on the scene with your channel, Fun Speculation. I know you guys just hit 2,000 subscribers. Congratulations on that. Awesome
Thank you.
accomplishment. And I know that you guys host many shows every single week. We got I know that you guys do a Friday, a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually also have a so on Monday we do a little thing called tidbits where we just look at the games coming out for the week ahead, and it's just a shorter show. And I kind of do that whenever we have time. And Fuzzy Belvedere usually joins me for that one.
Right.
And then on Wednesdays we have FunPop, which is it's not gaming related. It's we do talk some games on there, but it's more movies, TV show, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, all that kind of fun stuff. And then you're
Oh,
right
that's
about it.
awesome.
So, and on Thursdays we got PM in the PM with Pong Soul. Friday is Xbox Ultimate, which is the first show that started the channel, and then Saturday is Fun Speculation podcast. So
Wow.
trying to
So
do a lot of different things, man. Just trying to have fun with
yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And as long as you're surrounded with people talking about things that you love, everything comes so natural and so
Yep.
easy. I can just imagine, and to go with the name of your channel, Fun Speculation. I mean, you can speculate about all those things all day if you really think about it. So that sounds really good. So Mav, let's kick off the show and let's get to know who Mav is, man. I know that I personally know of you from the Boomstick podcast. I think it was Double Barrel Gaming, either the Monday show or the Xbox Factor podcast that I know you from. And as soon as I started seeing your content, man, I subscribed real quickly. So give us a little bit
Appreciate that.
about your background. How long have you been in the podcasting game? What made you want to podcast? Stuff like that.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back. I always had listened to podcasts, right? I listened to Gamertag Radio and I had to download it and put it on my Zoom, you know?
Danny
Uh,
Pena,
yeah, Danny Pena. There was a bunch of great
Paris.
guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
Paris joined later, even. He wasn't even on there to begin with, right?
I
So
think
it was,
Peter Toledo was
yep,
on there early too.
yep. It was a great show. And I remember thinking, oh, this is cool. These guys are just like doing like what seems like a radio show. I didn't know really what a podcast was back then, because that's when they all were kind of getting kicked off. So I started listening to them, and um, it ended up eventually listening to like Podcast Unlocked from IGN. And listened to Easy Allies, those guys that come from game trailers and everything .com. But I was more interested in uh, possibly doing something with sports back then because I gotten a lot of encouragement back then to do something with sports. My family had always kind of pushed me into that because it's like they asked me a question, right, about sports or something, and it's like I just don't stop talking. Like
Gotcha.
yeah, it was just that was always that guy. I was obsessed.
Who
But
are
what
your
they
teams,
didn't
by the
know,
way, brother? Who are your
oh,
teams?
I'm a homer. Cowboys are playing right now, so
Okay,
I actually sit there to record the fourth quarter, and I'm going to finish that later. But yeah,
for sure.
Cowboys, Mavericks, Texas Rangers, Dallas Stars. Grew up in Dallas area, so always enjoyed that. But yeah, after when they what my family didn't know is like, I'm more passionate about games. I can't have a conversation with any of them about games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So eventually, with the whole pandemic thing and TV, all there was like not much to watch and stuff anymore. I started just checking out more YouTube, and I saw that there was other channels where people aren't actually part of any kind of games media and stuff, and they had these podcasts that were kind of popular. I discovered some like RDX and an Xbox Two, and I was like, wow, I guess I should just try something. I kind of was always too scared. I was always a clown, But you put a camera in front of me, shut down.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what I
go
mean?
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's like a
you've kind of had to learn how to open up, just like myself. I mean,
yeah.
I can carry a conversation, and I'm a very social person, even though I'm a loner
Mhm.
at heart. I like being by myself most of the time, but whenever you kind of surround me with a couple of people and you get me talking about something I enjoy, I can kind of open up.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like once I get familiar with people and I get to know people, I kind of open up. And for some reason, always a camera or like strangers being around people I didn't know was always kind of like that thing that made me shut down to like
Yeah,
nothing, you know.
yeah,
And so I kind of just started tinkering around with like recording things and then playing it back for people and then like filming a couple of things and then watching it back, just getting comfortable with like even seeing myself on camera, all right, or hearing my own voice and stuff like that. And then once I finally got comfortable with that, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do it. Screw it, no more. I'm gonna create a podcast. I'm gonna stop being scared, and then I'm gonna. But if I did it, I wanted to create a brand behind it, so it
gotcha,
has potential to grow into something bigger, you know what I mean? So, that's what I did. I started the Xbox Ultimate Podcast, and I created the, brand Fun Speculation. Fun Speculation, I just made that because it's what we all do, is what we all I mean, that's not what we're all doing. We're, like, talking about things that we love. We're all speculating. We don't know anything that's going on behind the scenes, you know, but
yeah,
we like
yeah.
to talk about it.
Exactly, exactly. We like to kind of put our 2 cents into things and to kind of predict where all of this is going. So that's
Yeah.
definitely all we do is speculate. That's I mean, whenever we're talking to Twitter to others, whenever we're talking to each other tonight, we're gonna be speculating. So that's an awesome name that you guys came up with and a great brand. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I actually got some flack for that name to begin with. You know, like, oh, what does that mean? You know, like you need to change your name. It's like it's not my name. It's the name of the channel. You know,
Yeah,
but you know it's growing, and you know, I just love doing it. Like I grew addicted to streaming, which I didn't even anticipate really even doing that, but I stream games all the time,
yeah,
and, you know, hang out with chat and doing the shows. I got to meet so many people and so many awesome people out here, you know, that I never would have met without starting the journey, you know. So I'm super glad we did. It's added so much to our lives over the last couple of 16 months now, I guess, or so. And yeah, we're just gonna keep it going, dude. I'm loving it.
that's
I'm
awesome,
happy
man.
that you're starting something, you know.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
definitely, man. I kind of have like kind of like similar situation as you, where I got kind of tired of sitting on the sidelines here, man, and not doing anything. Whenever I would have a conversation with my wife, she would always kind of encourage me and push me and tell me, you always have so much to say about like the gaming industry. Why don't you just get on the camera and say something? And I always
Yeah.
just see, babe, who the hell, who's gonna? I mean, who cares what I have to say, and more than that, I've always been someone that my thoughts are mine. I think about whatever it is that I think about are my thoughts, and that's pretty much the only person that matters. I mean, I always thought to myself, man, what am I going to do coming on a podcast and sharing my ideas? Why would anybody, but it's not that way, man. It's the way that she actually explained it kind of made me go for it. It's something that I don't want to
Yeah.
be on my deathbed one day and be like, oh man, I never tried, so that's definitely something that she pushed me on, and I thank her for it. And it's something that I'm really grateful for, man, because like I said, you're my second guest already. It's great. This is a great community, the gaming community, even though that you do have your toxic side of it with the console wars, shenanigans, and all that good stuff. There are so many positive people, man, that you meet. You meet someone like Boom, or like yourself, and the positivity and the encouragement that comes from your stories and your backgrounds.
Mhm.
They really can make a difference in someone's life, as simple and as weird as that sounds. It really can. You can be the inspiring force behind someone that does something that changes their life. That's kind of like the way that we have to kind of think about this. And it's something that I'm glad, man. But to go back on some of the things you said, let me ask you early on those podcasts that you were listening
Yeah.
to. because I kind of discovered them during the 360 era. That's when
Yeah.
yeah, that's when I became kind of like a hardcore gamer, that I knew what, oh my God, people talk about games online, and there's a forums, and there's all these things where people are communicating. And that's really where I learned about the back, the industry and the people behind it. Major Nelson was actually the very first podcast that I ever listened to, was Major
Yeah.
Nelson's podcast.
Mhm.
So just like yourself, I came aware of Gamer Tag Radio. They were local to me, actually, in Miami. I live in
Oh,
Miami,
yeah,
Florida,
yeah.
so
Mhm.
they were local over here. Danny was local over here. Uh,
I heard he,
and
always really pushed, like, local stuff too, right? With the
yes,
community and getting out there to
yeah,
grow his channel too, so
yeah, they actually hosted a couple of events called Community Vibes. I went to one of them. I met
yeah.
Hip Hop Gamer there. It was a great time, man. It really was. And these things can balloon and they can spiral into things that we have no idea. So, to the point that I was making though was, do you remember? How about the One Up podcast? You remember those?
I remember OneUp.com. But
Yeah,
I didn't listen to their podcast. I did check out OneUp.com all the time. I remember something had like they gotten sold or something happened where it got shut down. I don't know if even it could be back for all I know now. But there's a lot of those great gaming sites back then. Like I used to frequent IGN, GameSpot, OneUp, Joystick, Kotaku, like every day. It was
yeah,
just
for
and
sure.
before I really got hooked into Twitter, that was like my rotation. I just went to those different websites every day, and I was just like obsessing over the news of gaming.
Absolutely.
GameSpot forums and all that stuff. But then N4G kind of also, and I always kind of had a just real interest in everything going on behind the scenes and
Yeah, me too.
all the games that were coming out. I'm always living for the next thing, like what's next, what's next, and always kind of hooked into that stuff, dude. So listen to gaming podcasts and stuff was just a natural progression.
Did you become kind of like I did, enthralled with kind of like the gaming industry as a whole, like where all of a sudden now you weren't just thinking about the games that were coming out, because obviously those we enjoy whenever they come out and stuff like that, that's a given. But like, did you kind of get enthralled, kind of like I did, wanting to know about, oh man, what strategies is this XYZ company going to do? Wow, PlayStation did what back in the day against Sega? All this
Yeah.
stuff that it really, I just got enthralled in all of it, man. And I started doing all the research and learning about when these systems were coming out and the E3 events and their strategies and stuff like that. And it's something that I look forward to every year, man. And that's kind of like my favorite part of the gaming industry. It's kind of like the chess pieces that are behind the scenes, and it's something
Mhm.
that I really enjoy, man. How does that, like, is that something that you're interested in, that kind of like gravitates you towards the gaming?
Yeah, I had always I mean, actually, to be honest with the last couple of years, I'm paying less attention than was even before I started podcasting. I mean, back in the day, like, I was obsessive over all that kinda stuff. Like, I just all I did was consume gaming news and to the point I mean, I had a really good, like, memory bank for that kinda stuff. I have a really crappy memory, but, like, weird, unnecessary, pointless things, I remembered very well, and I would just always, like, retain all this information about, what happened at E3 in this year and, what happened, behind the scenes. This company got sold to who, this company closed down and then split off and then merged with this other company, all that kinda stuff, like, I always, like, was really interested in keeping track of it because I wanted to know who was making the games, right? And,
Gotcha.
it was always following all of that kinda news, and I don't read the gaming sites like I used to. I don't really go to the forums like I used to, and I don't really listen to as many podcasts as I used to. I just now it's, kind of converted more into about spending my time into playing the games and then trying to do our own thing, and you can't really I think Twitter has changed things a lot with the way I consume information and the way a lot of people because you can consume a lot more information in such a short period of time. Where you because all the feeds you're following are all just right there. You can scroll through. So when something happens, it's
It's
impossible to
instant.
miss it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
instant.
you're first to know if you're on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And if you're following the right people, you're always first to know. and you can get that information quickly and then learn a lot about it very quickly, right? As opposed to finding out stuff that day after it happened a lot of times, or things like that. So I think Twitter is like really just made it less time to consume that kind of information, and which has made me not need to listen to other
Yeah.
stuff anymore. And
And
I
I
think
can
what
and I, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think once you start doing creation a lot, like, you really start to understand and appreciate that all of these people that we've been listening to, all the games journalists, all this stuff, they're just people. They're
Yeah,
just people that have their own opinions, that your opinion is just as valuable as theirs. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So then it kind of puts less weight on it, and I find more value in watching the shows that I just find more entertaining, as opposed to, like, what's gonna give me the most information. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And let me tell you something. I really do think that these companies, the Sonys, the Xboxes of the world, and the Nintendos I think that they're paying more attention than ever to, to channels like yourself. And because if you really think about it, Mav, we're the consumer. So our opinion is so valuable to what it is that they're doing, that in a way, we're giving these companies kind of free feedback with the decisions that are being made. So whenever you have Sony make a decision, whether it's a bonehead decision, a good one, or Xbox the same way, they can instantly go to YouTube and Twitter and see what the conversation's like, and see, wait a minute, is this a good thing that we did here, or how are people taking the news? How are these content creators sharing the news with their audience and stuff like that? So
Mhm.
I really do think that and I say we now because I kind of include myself in this family with you guys. I think that we play a very pivotal role in gaming, period, because our voice does matter. We are the consumer. We spend the money, Mav, and that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Who spends the money?
Yeah,
And that's the and that's
100%.
the thing that that these companies really value. So yeah, man, all great points by you. And I think that eh, great points, man. There's nothing else to be said there. So Mav, let me start off by asking you, man. I Is it safe to assume you're an Xbox first gamer? Is that safe for me to say that? Is that fair?
Yeah. No, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I've
Okay.
ever since, I would say ever since the 360, it's been 100%, like, everything else is secondary, right? Because
Yeah.
there's been it's been so fulfilling that there hasn't been as need to play, as much other stuff. Like, the experience with the online, because I've been very social online with playing with friends all the time and stuff on there. It was never as good on any other platform, and I found more fun with the social aspect of
Yeah.
gaming, right? And that's what Xbox brought. Um, and even with the original Xbox, I spent more time on there than any other platform. But then it was like you don't know if is this going to continue, like what's gonna the next Xbox, or is there going to be one even at back then. So I think
Yeah.
back then it'd be too early to say you're an Xbox first gamer because that was their first platform. But once the
Yeah.
360 hit, it kind of like solidified, right? There was like
Absolutely.
nothing else. But I still love PlayStation. I love Nintendo. I have obvious issues sometimes with certain things, but like overall, there's great things about all three companies.
Yep.
And I think it's good when there's great competition. So I usually try and have all three consoles during the generation so I can play the best of everything. But I spend probably honestly like 80 to 90% or more of my time on Xbox, and
Yeah.
then just fill in the gaps with the other stuff.
Absolutely, Mav. Me and you are kind of on the same page there, where the majority of my time gets spent on Xbox too. I am
Yeah.
fortunate enough to own the other consoles. I mean, I have a PS5, PS3 still, Xbox 360. I still got my 360, but yeah, I
Yeah.
spend most of my time on the Xbox. I do have the Series S and the Series X, and I like just spending time between both consoles playing, depending on on if I'm sitting on my desk, or I just want to sit back on the sofa, whatever. So I definitely get what you mean by that. So let me ask you. Let's go back to Little Mav here, okay? Let's go back to
Okay.
Little Mav. So what was Little Mav's first console?
In television.
Really? Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
have the Intellivision. And what year was that? How old were you when you got that?
I don't even know what year it came out. It was in the house when I was born, right? And we had it for years. So even when I was like 3 or 4, I was playing on that thing, you know?
Wow.
It had this like slide in plastic sleeve where you could hit the pictures actually for the buttons. So there was games like Burger Time, Astro Smash, Frog Bog, Snafu, and I remember playing those a lot with the family. And then the next console we had that was like the first one we brought into the house was the Sega Master System.
The Master
Um,
System. Nice.
yeah, yeah. I had actually remembered I was like, why didn't we get an NES? You know, because I wanted an NES. But my brother was older than me. He was like 6 years older than me, and obviously, it was his choice. I was still really, really little, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, but we shared a room and we played a lot of like Double Dragon and yeah, there was like a safari game on there. I can't remember what it was called. Played football and um
Well,
man,
if
there's
you
so many great
remember,
games.
if you remember, actually, Sega, what they did, I saw a documentary one time about when Sega really started to become aggressive to try to go after the market share from Nintendo. They kind of catered toward that, teenager. They wanted to seem
Yeah.
like the edgy console, so maybe that's why kind of like your brother kind of fell into that, into
Well,
the
that
marketing hype.
happened in the Genesis generation. That's when they really started pushing that. The
Yeah.
Master System was like it was just like an afterthought almost in the industry, like, in the market, like, they were a younger company, Sega was back then, and I think that was kind of their first foray into the stepping into it, so there was probably, like, such a small percentage of Sega Master Systems that were owned compared to NESs, right? But the Genesis is when they really they brought in somebody and, to,
Tom
like, really
Kalinske, I think was his name
yeah,
or something like
make a
that.
push, yeah, to, like, "Hey, let's get aggressive," and, he did a great job turning that Sega brand into something huge with the Genesis.
Yeah, they really
Um,
focused on the sports. They really focused that they were going to be the system to go to for sports titles.
yep,
I mean, they made Sonic look like he was a badass, and Mario was a little nerd. So
yeah.
so it's one of those things that yeah, they did do a good job. But yeah, so you said the Master System was your second system, and then I mean by the time that the Genesis rolled around and I would say the PS1, like, were you already a teenager? Were you already in middle school? Like, talk about that
So I
era.
was the Genesis, I didn't ever have a Genesis. So I went from Master System to SNES because I
Oh,
that was
okay,
the first one that I got to pick, right? And I actually because I had been playing a lot of the NES over at my friends' houses, I really wanted the next Nintendo when it came out. So at the time when SNES came out, that was what I got, and I got that for my ninth birthday.
okay.
So I was super happy about that. Super Mario World, and there was like some good RPGs back then on the SNES, and
Yeah,
man,
man.
there was a lot of great games on that. So, but so I was 9 at that time, and then I graduated from that to the, um, I think the next one was the 64.
Okay,
Um,
and random question before you keep on
yep.
going with the Super Nintendo. Try to remember that first time that you opened up that package, man. What'd you think of that controller with the four buttons and the little shoulder buttons? Wasn't that revolutionary back then?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was like, what? This is different. I loved that controller. It still holds up to this day. Actually, like a lot of
Yeah,
people still like to use that controller.
it was
Um,
such like it was such an upgrade because you went from Sega having the three buttons and Nintendo with the two buttons, and all of a sudden now you have like six, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, now I'm a real gamer. I have all these
yeah,
buttons to choose from.
yep. Well, that on the 64 is like crazy. There was so many buttons on the 64. It was like, but it was weird. Also, it like you didn't know how to hold it.
Yeah,
Right? Like it was like,
yeah, yeah.
like you hold it over
You
here,
needed
but
like
then you
that.
have this like stick down here in the bottom middle. It's kind
You
of
needed
this
like
like,
that Ninja Turtle grip. I had that
yeah,
Ninja Turtle grip. So
yep,
I remember that the Nintendo 64, what actually got me to want one was that I went to Best Buy when Best Buy was early in the game, and they had one set up with the WCW wrestling game. You remember a Revenge or World Tour? I think it was World Tour, but it was a
yeah,
wrestling game that, man, when I played that thing, I begged my mom. I was like, "Mom, I need a 64 so bad," and she finally
yeah,
got it for me for Christmas. Those
yeah.
wrestling
There was
games
a
were awesome back then.
couple of great ones. WCW versus NWO.
Yes.
There was like 2 or 3 of them. I can't remember, the names of all of them, but those were all amazing. Great games. They had Wave Race 64,
Oh yeah.
Super Mario 64. There was so many great games that were, like, revolutionary, and not just the controller and having all those extra buttons, but the worlds. You know, you had 3D open environment worlds, really for the first time, on a console, as opposed to everything being on a 2D plane before,
Game
right?
changers, man.
Yeah, game changers, 100%. So that was big time. Um, yeah, and then then I got PS1, a GameCube. I've had most ever since I became a teenager. I think the 64 I got when I was like 13, maybe,
Okay.
12, 13 years old, maybe even 14. I don't remember what year that came out, but, it would have been about 4 years after the SNES, I think, so probably around 13, and, ever since then, tried to own as many consoles as I can, right? I played GameCube, PlayStations, freaking every console actually since then I think I've owned, to be
Did you
honest
ever
with
have
you.
that's awesome, man. Did you ever have a stage where you weren't gaming as much, like maybe in your early teenager years or your earlier college years or something like that, where all of a sudden you're like interested in other things, like maybe girls and going out and hanging out with with some friends and stuff, and you weren't playing or gaming as much?
Um, I no, I mean, honest with you, so there was a certain time when there was less different kinds of games I was interested in, and I was more only playing like a couple, but, even then, I've always been really into it, um, but man, when I was a teenager, like, the Dreamcast came out, and I was
Nice.
obsessed with that.
Yeah.
I was playing everything on that. The PS2 came out. I was playing everything. Me and my friends were always playing games. So even when we were out going around acting crazy, being stupid teenagers, we would usually come back to my house because I was the house that everybody came to, and we all just chilled and hung out and played split screen, or we played fighting games and traded the controller off. And I was always playing something. But Halo really changed things once the Xbox Live came out with Halo 2.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when I was like, I just played like 8 hours a night, probably at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it became kind of like an obsession,
Hmm.
the Xbox Live really revolutionized online gaming for consoles, so that's
Oh yeah, for
definitely
sure.
something. I remember that I did have a modded original Xbox, and I was playing Halo 1 online via LAN, via X-Link Kai, I think was the name of it. So I got to kind of, get
Yeah.
my hands on the online experience early on, and it was a game changer, man. There was nothing like it. And even though that nowadays you go online, nobody really has a mic, there's no talking. And if you remember those early days, man, it was the wild west, man. You used to go in there and already there was a fight going on, and I mean, it was really petty and stuff like that, but it's kind of like what made it fun, I don't know if you experienced that with Ghost Recon or any of the early games, but it was so much
Oh
fun to go
yeah.
online, and
It
all the shit talking was insane, dude.
it was
It, but
bad. Yeah,
but
it
it
was
was part of the
bad.
fun.
Yeah. It was crazy, man. I mean, there was websites that we took part in called Clan Battles, and had your
Yes.
clan and stuff, and you had Halo 2 was like, I mean, I had like 5 or 6 guys that we just played every night together, and there's always 4 of us online, so it was like 4 of us would hop in, and we would have our squad, and we would just freaking, play every night nonstop, and then when there was enough of us, we would do big team, right?
Yeah.
And, yeah, the crap talking and stuff back then was
It,
absolutely insane. There was so much of it.
oh yeah.
Um, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare when that came out as well. Graw 2, Rainbow Six
Hmm.
Vegas, Vegas 2, on the 360. Those games all were like insane
Especially the
for
first
that.
Gears of War. The first Gears of War was
Yeah.
notorious for shit talkers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
but
was bad. People think it's bad now, but yeah,
nah.
it was way worse then, man. But that's what it kind of changed when Party Chat came out because you just got started hanging out with just the people that you're, friends with.
Yeah.
Although the lobbies kind of died vocally as well. So it did have some detriment as well, right? With Party Chat, but overall I think it's a good thing.
That's a great point. So it's nice to hear about your background with all the gaming consoles that you own, because just like these other voices that you hear online, and just like myself, I mean, we are pretty well versed in all of these different systems and all of these different things. So that's
Yeah.
why I think whenever you give out an opinion, I think that it's a very valid one, man. You or someone like Mr. Boom or something like that that's owned a crap load of systems as well. You guys, make points that you look at it as the industry as a whole. You're just not talking because, yeah, we all prefer Xbox. That's a given, because it's where we prefer to play. But it doesn't mean that when you say something about PlayStation or Nintendo or even the Oculus Quest or whatever, it doesn't mean that it's coming from a bad place. It's coming from a place where, hey, I've experienced all these other systems. I kind of know what it is that I'm talking about here. So it's great to hear about your background, man, and that you own so many systems and you were, enthralled in all of these different ecosystems. That's so important, and it's really what makes gaming great. Each
Oh yeah.
ecosystem is unique. If you remember, uh, right now, I think that we're kind of in the stage where, when you jump from your PlayStation to your Xbox to your PC, you really don't see a difference across the board like you used to back in the day. When you used to play a Sega Genesis game, you knew it was a Sega Genesis game. And I think that
Yeah.
we don't live in those times anymore. But still, it's all about the ecosystem now that you prefer. So if you made your home, the PlayStation, and that's where you feel the most comfortable. That's where all your are, your libraries, your trophies, all that good stuff. By all means, game wherever you feel at home. And that's always what I tell everyone. And there doesn't need to be this constant battle that some of these guys have online, man. That it's like you say something and you get attacked, and it's like, relax, guys. It's not that serious. There's
Yeah.
it's not that serious, guys. But let me ask you. So you've owned all the Xboxes, obviously. Which,
Yep.
man, if you had to pick one, right? Not to put you on the spot, but what would you consider your favorite system of all time, man? If you even have one. If you don't want to pick one, that's cool too. But what would you say is your overall favorite system that you've ever owned?
This is actually becoming an easier answer every few months, I think, and it's the Series X.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
And
I it
what
used
is
to be
it
the
that's
Dreamcast, but or the
okay?
360. I had a back and forth on that, but the Series X is the best console I've ever owned by far.
What is it about it that has surpassed those other two great systems, man? Is it just just the ecosystem? I mean, what is it that they've been able to kind of take the title?
It's a lot of it's like all the services and the ecosystem that they have with Game Pass. There's so many games that I play that I would have never tried before because they're in a service that I'm not really taking any risk, right? Back then, you would like, okay, $60, $60, $60, and you would trade I would trade in games to be able to afford new games, and it was tough decisions at times about what I was gonna get and what I could play and all that kind of stuff. But now it's about, hey, you have the service and you can just try all these games or play them, and if you like them, you just keep playing it. If you don't, then that's okay. You move on. You didn't lose anything.
Yeah,
And so that aspect, but it's also the the compatibility that they have and the advancements for supporting old games actually, and with updates. So there's a lot of games that I used to like, but they kind of were held back by the time, and these games are getting updates to be played at like 60 frames per second. A lot of them 4K resolution, HDR, and all these things. And so it's my favorite console because it makes the stuff that you already owned better.
absolutely.
So, the 360 games, Xbox One games, even some OG Xbox games. There's a lot of games on there that if you play on the Series X, it's a way better experience than you ever got to play back then when you originally played it for the first time.
Yeah,
So that adds so much value to your library. It's crazy. Like never before have you bought a console and automatically it adds value to your existing library, right?
absolutely.
That's what it is, hands down, and, that combined with the value of everything they're coming out with, and, man, 60 frames and the SSD speeds and the quick resume and all these quality of life features, man. It's crazy that people don't realize how good we've got it now. You
Yep.
know, you go back and to think about the good old days, right? And I have a lot of nostalgia and feel good moments from those days. You know, about I say it a lot of times, standing in front of that Toys R Us section. You know, when you're a kid, and they got all the plastic sleeves of the game sleeves, and they have these little take to the front cards in the front. You pull out a card, and you take it to
I
the
remember
window at
that.
the front,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so back then, it was like you didn't get to go there that often, right? It was like a special thing when you got to go to Toys R Us. For me, at least, it was. And then it was a hard decision. You know, what do you get? You stand in front of that whole wall, and it's like, oh my gosh, my parents are letting me get a game. You
And you're
know?
taking a chance too, dude, because
Yes.
once that game is purchased, you better like it,
Yeah, exactly.
because
Like
you ain't gonna return it.
you may not get another one for a couple months, or you know what I mean, or who knows when the next time you get a new game is. And until then, you're going to be using like rental services and stuff like Blockbuster, or if Blockbuster was even a thing then. I don't even remember, but the we had some movie places that you could rent games at and stuff. But you know, it was such a like decision back then on what you were going to buy. And you know, you played that heck out of that one game, you know. And then if you had a friend whose house and they had like 10 games, it's like, oh my gosh, you got 10 games. You know, like I had like one or two at any time because we had to sell games a lot of times to get new ones, you know.
Yeah,
So now it's like all of these things plus, you know, you can just pay 15 bucks and you get hundreds of games automatically. It's
at your
insane.
fingertips, as long as
Yes.
you download. And nowadays, you don't even have to download it. You could just stream
Yeah.
most of them, also.
Yeah,
So
you don't
it's
even have to get off the couch to switch games. You know what I mean? You could just sit there and just play, oh, play this, play that, play this, play that, talk to somebody while they're playing a game, you're playing something else. All of these things. And people kind of take a lot of that stuff for granted because it's where the technology's gone. But that's why I get so annoyed by the little nitpicky complaints constantly. Like I
yeah,
just get so annoyed by people complaining constantly about stupid stuff that's really not a big deal that we would only dream of being a possibility one day. Like whenever
exactly.
20 years ago, 10 years ago even, did we ever think we'd be experiencing the stuff that we are now?
No way. No way.
No.
Can you imagine back in the day they told you that your Sega Dreamcast purchase would make your Sega Genesis games better? Can you imagine that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it'd be insane, you know?
That I
Like,
mean, I mean, and that's basically what Xbox has done. I like the way that Phil Spencer has really taken, the PC approach with y- look, Xbox, we can go down history, we can go down memory lane and history and all that good stuff, and talk about all the bonehead decisions that they've made, because they've made some. They've learned across the way, but the bottom line is that Phil Spencer is a gamer at the end of the day, and I
yeah.
really do think that he understood that taking the PC route was the best way for console gaming. It just makes sense from a long time gamer that when you buy a better system, your older game should run better. If the hardware is more powerful, it should enhance in some way your games, if it's especially if it's built on the same architecture.
Yeah, that's
So it's
how
just
it worked on PC, right? You know?
exactly. So
So,
it's one of those things that now with the x86 architecture, there's no reason why now, whenever the next Xbox consoles come out, why the games shouldn't run even better. So it's
yeah.
it's one of those things that they've really introduced again. I feel like Xbox has really pushed the industry forward, where now these consoles are kind of like PCs, where when every time that you upgrade to one, your stuff is going to run better. So that's a great point, and I kind of understand where you're coming from, how the Xbox Series X has become your favorite console. It's only going to
Yeah.
get better, Mav. I think that we haven't really I don't even think that we've even come close to seeing what these systems are capable of doing, to be honest with you, because
No.
the
That's
chip
that's the same every
shortage.
generation too, you know what I mean? Like
Yep,
I think we always find the best like really genre or generation defining games come out in the middle to the end of the generation, right?
absolutely.
So we're still in those early stages of these consoles, so it's only gonna get better.
Absolutely, man. And let me ask you, where do you like? Because I know you've owned all the Xboxes and you've always been, keeping up with the media and all that good stuff. Do you like where Xbox is right now in 2022, coming into 2022? Do you think that they're in a good position? Do you think that they could do better? Where do you think they are from that standpoint?
It's definitely things they can improve, but overall, I mean, they're doing amazing. I mean, they've turned around the brand from a place that was hard to come back from, right? So they've crawled out of that hole and they've gotten so much momentum now. They're doing so well that the key is they keep investing, right? So that's the thing. As long as they don't stop with that investment into gaming, which I doesn't sound like they are because it's coming from the top at Microsoft that gaming is a huge part of what they're going to be doing and is a huge focal point of the company now, right? Where that didn't used to be the case. It used to be, you know, just a part of the company, a small part of the company, right?
Great
And now it's
point.
a core aspect of the company. So when you have the backing of a giant like Microsoft and you have the expertise of um, people that have been making these games for 20 years now, right? Because they just celebrated their 20 year anniversary, making consoles for 20 years now. They have a deep history with gaming and they understand gaming, but they also understand tech and they have a big pocketbook, right? So they're trying to change the industry, and they've been making strides doing that because that was their different path. I think once they struck out early on in the Xbox One generation and had really failed with their messaging and they didn't really know what they're doing. They kind of like, hey, we're just going to push for the living room, and they kind of really marketed it poorly
Yeah.
with mixed messaging. And I think that was more of the issue than anything else. Is this there wasn't a clear, distinct message or direction that they were pushing to people. It was a bunch of confusion, and that led to confusion with the media. That led to a bunch of negativity. That led to PlayStation just easily being able to take advantage of the situation.
That that
And
that's a great point, Mav. Because I remember, not to cut you off, but I remember sitting in and watching those interviews and watching Xbox getting hammered by the media, and I remember sitting there and thinking, uh, people, you do know that for the PlayStation 4, you do know that you have to install your games, right? The same way that you have to install them on
yeah,
the Xbox, and they made it seem like if no, there's no installations, there's no DRM, there's none of that stuff, and it's kind of like, what are you guys talking about? And I remember that very vividly, and it's true. That's a great point that you made. Their messaging was so mixed and so all over the place that they really let Sony kind of take control of the narrative. So that's a
yeah.
great point.
Yeah, they had information that they'd put out there, but it was all very vague. And then they kept making appearances either on podcasts or on gaming media sites and stuff like that. And they were being interviewed and being asked these questions about these things, and nobody had any answers.
Yeah,
And that was a huge issue. So then it led to a lot of not fun speculation, but negative speculation, and a lot of people trying to like, oh, well, this is bad. This is doom and gloom. This is going to be really bad for the industry. You know, DRM was a hot topic at the time,
oh
which
yeah,
turns out like that's just part of the digital world of the future, right? And like people always live in the now and they don't live in the and they don't think to the future. Like when
right.
the and that's something that is hard to get people past. And PlayStation has always known that, and they've always marketed well, really, really well for that. You know, they know what their fans care about right now, right?
Hmm.
Where Xbox has always been a little bit more forward thinking and trying to push things forward. But when they did that at that time, it was really poorly done and just they put the wrong priority. They had priorities mixed up with how they were approaching the consumer
Yeah, they
and their
tried to
investment.
kind of they kind of tried to force their way instead of kind of easing the customer in
Yes,
and talking about the benefits and selling the benefits. That's what they should have kind of focused on. And instead they kind of were kind of aggressive with, hey, this is the way we're going, so you got to be on board. And whenever you come at, consumers that way, there's always going to be pushback. So,
yeah,
you
and
know,
and once the gaming media all has the same opinion, then you're pretty much done,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Um, that's kind of what happened, and PlayStation took advantage of it, caught on, and Xbox bundled in the Connect was $100 more expensive,
Oh
that
yeah.
was less powerful, so that I mean, everything was going against Xbox at that time. the only thing they had as an advantage early in the Xbox One generation was good games. They
Oh
actually
yeah.
had good games, and the PlayStation 4 actually didn't have as many good games early on in the generation. But it didn't matter because the investment was turning so high and the PlayStation 4 was selling so well, Xbox sales were doing so poorly that a lot of the deals from third-party companies and everything started shifting towards PlayStation.
Yeah, and they
And
were able to they were able to leverage the 360 crowd. The PlayStation 4 was.
oh yeah, they got
So,
a lot of people going from 360 to PS4.
yep. Yep, they
Um,
made that deal with Call of Duty, which made them the Call of Duty
Destiny.
box, which was the Destiny. Yep, all those great marketing strategy by Sony. Not to take anything away from them, I think that they
Oh
were
yeah.
doing exactly what they needed to do. You know.
Yep, 100%. And they rode that wave all the way through the generation, and um, they did a great job. And then about halfway through the gen, they started really coming out with some really amazing games, right?
Hmm.
And that really carried them all the way through. And I think that for Xbox to come out of that to where they are now is such a huge, huge turnaround. And it's almost like the tables are turning a little bit. Now, PlayStation's not making the same kind of as bad mistakes as Xbox did, but I think PlayStation now is learning that a lot of this stuff that Xbox has been pushing this last few years is actually gonna catch up with them if they don't start doing some of those same things.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a shift in the whole gaming industry. We're seeing Microsoft leading the way with a lot of things now because they have refocused on the gaming aspect of things. They've
Yeah.
made a reinvestment into all of it, purchasing all these studios, getting all of these games in development, um, back end stuff like Game Pass, cloud gaming. All of these things are all a huge focal point and it's only going to keep carrying through. So I
Yeah.
think they passed 12 million sales now,
Yes, they did.
um, which is a huge accomplishment for this point in the generation. They're not that far behind Sony as far as sales go, and I think it's a bunch of good decisions,
Absolutely. So
back to
you're
back.
so to kind of sum it up, you think you like where they're at right now. You think they're in a solid state right now in the industry.
Oh, for sure. If you want to like nitpick, like we can say, well, they're probably going to be a little light on first party games this next few months, right? They may also have some issues like with some things like the game DVR doesn't work like it should, right? Aspects like that. Like there's definitely always things to work on and improve on. But as far as where they're headed, I just look at all of the things that I know are in the works, and that just makes me happy. I
Yeah,
have a console that I love. There's plenty of games to play on it, and I know for a fact there is a crap ton of amazing, huge games coming for it
absolutely.
later this year, and then moving on all the way to 2023,
Y-
2024.
You know what, Mav? I'll put it to you like this. Let me tell you from my perspective what I see is happening here and when this turn kind of came about, at least in my opinion. When right before the Xbox Series X was going to come out, we had the unfortunate news of hearing that Halo had to be delayed due to the backlash and the showing at E3. And I
Mhm.
remember that was, in my opinion, the turning point here, because I feel like when that was the biggest blessing in disguise that could have happened to Xbox, because I think that from that moment on they cranked that volume up to 11, brother. They have not let up since that happened. They started making exclusive deals for third party content on Game Pass when that happened. They were forced to. Their biggest game that was supposed to launch alongside the Xbox Series X and the S, which we didn't know about the S back then, it's gonna be delayed for over a year. So in a way, I feel like if Phil Spencer and the team really gathered and said, guys, we really need to make a difference here, because we know what we're trying to accomplish. We know that we have, in our opinion, the superior product, the superior services. So we really need to get ahead. And I feel, Mav, that was really the turning point in all of this. The winds of change all of a sudden were for Microsoft, where it was good news after good news coming out month after month, constantly being in the headlines. They even turned around and they even turned the catastrophe that was the Series S launch, that it was kind of spoiled by Brad Sims. And they even turned it around, dude, and it became like a big success for them and like something positive. And I think that that was the turning point. And I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, what it's about, Math. They finally were able to get their own identity, because I'm an Xbox lifer. I've preferred Xbox since the original. I can tell you the thing about Xbox that they've always had a stigma on them, kind of like a stank, is that they were always second place to Sony. They're always they're trying to be like the PlayStation. Oh, they're trying to compete with the PlayStation. Not anymore. They kind of paved their own way, kind of like Nintendo has. Nintendo did that back in the day with the Wii, where they kind of separated themselves and they said, we're going to take on our own identity and we're going to go this way. We're not going to worry about
Yeah.
Xbox and PlayStation anymore. And I think that that's what Xbox has done in this generation. They've kind of steered their own way, kind of like Nintendo did, and said, we're not chasing PlayStation anymore. We're going in our own direction. And I think that is really the best thing that they have done since their inception. I really do. Because now you have three companies that are doing their own thing. They don't feel like a carbon copy of each other. You kind of feel as a gamer that you do want to be invested in the three companies, like you mentioned earlier. And I really do think that I agree with you. Xbox is in a great place right now, man. And I couldn't be happier for them. They had to work really hard to come back from that Xbox One catastrophe. And I'm really happy for the guys there, man. When you work and you're working on something that, you could tell that they put their heart and soul into, and it's getting such bad press and stuff like that. I could just imagine how the morale must have been down, man. But they picked it up now and they got all of us fans excited, and it's nothing but good things coming forward for everyone in the gaming industry, for whether you like PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I definitely have things I like to see change for certain things, right? But at the end of the day, there all that matters is for the people that are purchasing those products are super happy with them, right? And I
Yeah,
think that for the most part, that's the case right now. So even though we can all say, "Oh, I would like them to do this, or do that," at the end of the day, it doesn't matter
nitpicking.
if it doesn't matter if it's not meant for you, right? Like so, for example, Nintendo, it's not for it, I have a hard time getting into it now, right?
Yeah,
But it's okay. There other people love it, you know. Um, PlayStation, I love actually a lot of the news that's coming out with them right now. So I have a lot of high hopes for that. You can always count on them for great exclusives and stuff, you know. So I'm very high actually on PlayStation right now as far as where they're going now that they've been announcing, and there's some of these rumors coming out about some of their potential things happening. So
they
I
have
think they're in a
bangers
great
coming this year.
place.
Yeah,
Oh,
they got
they
bangers
got
coming.
Gran Turismo's coming. You got Horizon Forbidden West, and you got God of War Ragnarok. I wasn't as big into God of War or Horizon on the PS4. I just for some reason couldn't get into them. Uncharted is my favorite
Oh, Uncharted is
franchise.
off. Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
and I also like Gran Turismo a lot. I always have. So I'm really excited about Gran Turismo coming. But yeah, PlayStation I think is a good place. But man, they're Xbox just got so much value, you
Yeah,
know?
they really
And
do.
that's the main thing is they're doing so much more extra for the consumer right now that it's crazy, and it's making this the other guys seem a little archaic in some ways, you know? But we'll see. I think that's gonna change. I think some of this news coming out, I think it's gonna change. So we'll see where everything goes at Spartacus and if Nintendo announces something new, hopefully within the year or so. I'm really curious to see where the future's going.
Absolutely. And during your comments, you did say that Xbox had surpassed 12 million in sales. And I mean, I agree with you that them even being in the same ballpark as a PS5, that's a win. That needs to be a
Yeah,
win for Team Xbox there, especially coming, off the sales of the Xbox One, where from the beginning, man. I mean, in the beginning it was a little close. They did sell really well in the first few months, but after that it was a landslide for Sony. I mean,
yeah,
they didn't really have to try if you really think about it. But so do you see any stage in this generation where the Xbox can catch up and potentially surpass the PS5? Do you want to speculate on that? Do you think that's something that can happen, or
Well, I think well, for one thing, like going back, I want to touch on something that Xbox actually was beating Sony back in the day on the 360, right?
yes, they were.
So it wasn't until back at the end of that generation when Xbox was focusing a lot on Connect, and then that Blu-ray player for PlayStation was was the best value to get a Blu-ray player at the time, and you got a game console out of it as well, right? So it was a win-win situation. Like that's PS3 really caught up to Xbox at that time, and in the last 2 years of the 360 going into the Xbox One was like all that bad era. They just had all their focus in the wrong places and everything. So going into this, yes, now if they can recapture that, and so a lot of people, the reason I'm bringing that up, a lot of people think it's impossible to beat Sony. Well, they've done it before.
Yeah,
They were had a huge lead on Sony back in the day, actually on the 360, because you remember the PS3 came out and it was like $600, right?
yeah, oh yeah.
And it came
You
it
needed
came out
Mav. You needed a second job for it, man.
yes, yeah, go get a second job. Yeah, I mean that crazy kind of stuff. Like so it's very possible now. The key factor to this is the Series S. I think first off, I want to say that console sales don't really matter as much as they used to either, right?
Yeah,
So when we say like beating them, like what does that mean? Like if it's just focused on like console sale numbers, I think like globally, it's not going to happen, right? Sony has too strong of a foothold in the Asian market and all over Asia, right? I
especially
think it's
Europe.
just yep. Well, Europe, I think Xbox is making more strides now, but there's definitely parts of Europe that they need to work on, right? But like
Hmm.
in the UK, Xbox is still pretty popular, right?
Okay.
But as far as like India, and like Japan and territories like that, it's they got a lot of ground to make up, you know. However, in the US, it's really more even, and I definitely could foresee Xbox leading PlayStation within the next few years, maybe even sooner, because of the Series S.
Absolutely. They've
I mean, you have
definitely
299, right?
299, man. And if you really think about it, in a few years, they can even drop that sucker down by 50 or $100 to really, make strides and try to push forward. And that's kind of something that Sony did a great job on with the PS4. Remember that bundle with Spider-Man? That's when the console sales just went crazy,
Yeah,
dude. As soon as they brought out that bundle with Spider-Man, if Microsoft can kind of figure out a way to kind of drop that system to that sweet price point of 199, bundle in maybe 3 months of Game Pass. That could be when things go crazy for them. If you really think about it.
yeah. And there's already some sales out there starting for the Series S. I see a pop up around 279 and stuff like that from different websites. So you're definitely going to see the Series S continue to sell like crazy. If you're a casual gamer, if you're a parent, if you're whatever, you're just looking to get a game console for your kids, no better value. Uh,
Absolutely.
299 right now. You get it, plug it in, you get Game Pass, you have access to hundreds of games, and all you had to buy was a $300 console. That's the same price as the Switch.
Oh yeah, and you're getting 1440p, 1080p on most of these titles. I mean, I'll tell you right now, man. When I switch between my Series S and my Series X, obviously when you're playing on the 4K TV, you can tell the difference, all that good stuff. But when I'm playing on my 1440p monitor, dude, I can't. Sometimes I can't even tell the difference, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a great experience. And the key is the frame rate,
Yep.
and then the SSDs and the CPU speed. Right, so it's a beast of a little machine, dude. Like, and honestly, I've learned something this generation because of the Series S. Right,
What's that?
I used to really be like, oh, resolution so important. You can really tell. You can really tell. Um, and we have a Series S for my daughter, and we have a Series X, and we had a One X still, right? So I would be between the machines. Like Series S looks way better than a One X, on every game that I've seen running on a Series S and a One X, 100% looks way better. Okay, the fidelity on the Series S is way better than a One X with all the graphics. The SSD speed, loading times, and the main thing is most of those games you can get at 60 frames on the
Oh
Series
yeah,
S when you can
the
only get them
frame
at
rate is
30.
yep. The frame rate is a game changer, man.
Yep, and that matters more than anything. So for me, it's really concreted the fact that the frame rate is 100%. If frame rate and fidelity always take precedent for me over resolution now. Where last generation, like I was like, oh, it needs to be 4K. I can really tell the difference. I can if I play like a Switch game, right? Um, it's not about I used to think it was about the resolution that I had a lot of issues with, even though some of theirs go crazy low. But it's the fidelity, the textures, and 30 frames on a lot of the games, right?
Oh yeah,
That I have issues with, and I think that um, the Series S for the price, it's insane what you get to do with that thing.
you
And
can't beat it. You cannot build a
yeah,
PC that can run the same specs as a Series S for $300, dude. It's just
oh
not gonna
no,
happen.
no,
It's
and
just not gonna
think
happen.
about all the games that are coming out for it. You
Yep.
know, they're gonna look and play amazing, and you're gonna be able to like get all those in a service like Game Pass. So yeah, if they get that thing down to 250 and bundle in a game, like, or 250 with 3 months of Game Pass, you know what I mean? Um,
I think
it
that's
dude,
really when we're gonna start seeing these sales. I think that's when we're really gonna see a jump, to be honest with you. But that's that's my opinion. So Mav, you did mention some big games coming for 2022. What are some of the games that you're looking forward to this year, man?
Starfield,
Oh
100%.
yeah,
Starfield's number 1. Nothing comes close to Starfield. I've been waiting for the next Todd Howard, Bethesda Game Studios RPG, um, for a long time. And I like Fallout, but Fallout isn't my favorite of theirs. My favorite was always the Elder Scrolls games, but I remember them talking back in the day about possibly wanting to do something sci-fi in the future.
yeah.
And this is that Bethesda Game Studios style RPG in space. And it's like a dream game. So I can't wait for it. Besides that, I mean, Redfall is right now. There's like rumors and rumblings that it's going to get pushed back to holiday 2022
Yeah.
instead of summer. Regardless, like if it actually comes out this year, so I'm really looking forward to that because that's a kind of like a
What do you think
co-op
about
open
those?
world.
And what do you think about those delays, like with the Stalker, and if Redfall does get delayed? I mean, do you think that Microsoft would have to kind of open up the wallet there and get a couple of exclusives to kind of, give them some leverage?
Yeah, first off, I don't really care about delays, but like a lot of people are going to make a big deal about that, and I
Hmm.
think just to make sure there's big titles in the news hitting within the Xbox branding and mind share
Yeah,
aspect. Yeah, they've already done it a little bit. I mean, in 4 days, we're having the Hitman Trilogy and Rainbow Six Extraction hit in Game Pass day one,
that's a lot
right?
of
And
game.
that's huge. That's a
Hmm.
massive thing. That a year ago from today, we wouldn't even have thought that something like that was a possibility,
That's a good
right?
point.
Um, Before MLB The Show and before Outriders got announced, we wouldn't have thought that that was a possibility of these third party massive things that are new. Because a Hitman Trilogy is a new thing they're selling, like as a bundle, right?
Yeah,
So that's a new product, Hitman Trilogy, and it's hitting in Game Pass day one. And the season 2 content is dropping for Hitman that day. Then you have Rainbow Six Extraction, one of Ubisoft's bigger games for this year hitting Game Pass day one. So are there going to be more deals? 100%. And the crazy thing is both of these deals didn't get announced until weeks before they are scheduled to release.
that's
So
true.
we have
Yep,
no idea what's coming as far
that's a
as
good point.
the Game Pass. We could any Monday or Thursday, we could just check Twitter and get a huge announcement about another massive game coming to Game Pass.
Absolutely, man. Those are great points. So you did mention Redfall, Starfield. What else are you looking forward to in
Gran
2022?
Gran Turismo.
Okay.
Yep, Gran Turismo. Triangle Strategy is a RPG, tactics RPG that looks like a um it's not a sequel, but it's heavily inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics, which is one of my favorite games of all time.
Okay.
So I'm really looking forward to that. That's coming out on the Switch. I'm looking forward to. I believe there's going to be a Forza Motorsport drop this year.
I think so
Um,
too.
I don't know for sure, but a lot of the rumblings are that it's probably going to hit this year. And just like Forza Horizon 5, they probably won't announce that to like E3
Yeah.
and have the release date around that time announced. So I am hoping for that. And if that happens, that's definitely one. Stalker 2 for sure as well. I mean, there's just so much, dude. I am excited to try Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, but I need to finish the first two games first. I just couldn't get
Yeah.
into them.
The God of
And
War, man, it just came out on PC. I know you must know that for sure, but it just came out
yeah,
on PC, I think yesterday or Friday actually, sorry. And I picked it up, man. I had already beaten it on the PS4, and
yeah.
it's a great game, Mav. If you give yourself some time and you really get into that
I
story,
get
man,
about
it's
halfway into it and like right now I think it kind of opened up. I met like this guy and then there's like this portal that opened and stuff,
oh, okay.
like
Okay.
and so I was playing it just like it doesn't I don't ever have the like desire to go and launch it to see what happens next. You know what I
Gotcha. Did
mean?
you
Like
did you were you enthralled with the first ones that came out on PS2 and PS3?
no.
Oh, okay. So maybe
I
that
wasn't ever really into God of War, period,
yeah. So maybe that's what it is because there is kind of like a connection with the other games that I have,
Yeah,
and that's kind
maybe.
of like and that's fine though. I mean, it's still a great story, but if you get into it and you have the time to do it, dude, really recommend it. It's a nice story, and a very satisfying ending.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried them all. It's like extremely impressive. Like God of War, like I can look at it and be like, wow, that's an amazing game, right?
Yeah,
That is amazing. The voice acting is incredible. The graphics are incredible. The gameplay is incredible. Everything in it is incredible. I just am not enjoying it.
I got you.
So for whatever reason, that happens with some franchises. That happens with some games. Like I that happens with a lot of third party
That
games.
happened yeah, that happened with me with Horizon. The first Horizon, I tried it out, man. I
Yeah,
gave it a good 4 hours and I just couldn't get into it, man. And everybody kept on telling me keep pushing through, it'll come through, but man, I was like, I don't know,
yeah.
man.
And
It
sometimes it'll
just
click halfway. Sometimes it'll eventually catch on. I had that same issue with Red Dead Redemption 2.
oh, really?
Um, Red Dead 1 was like my favorite game, like in years, right? One of the best games of all time to me. And when I played Red Dead Redemption 2, I was like, okay, I'm having trouble getting into this, like
Mhm.
the controls were really like all over the place and like the story was uh, uh, good, but then I kinda got in that little campsite and I had to go and do things, and then I remember accidentally getting into a fight, and then I had a bounty on me, and I had no money to pay it, and then every time I would go ahead and try and do a challenge, these bounty hunters would come and kill me, and I wasn't great enough with the controls yet to be able to fend them off. It was, like, frustrating, but eventually, I battled through that, and after several months of just taking some time off playing it again, taking some time off playing it again, one time when I booted it back up, it just everything clicked, right?
Gotcha.
Everything just clicked, and I couldn't put it down every day. I just was eager. I also was thinking about it. I gotta get back to Red Dead. Gotta get back to Red Dead. And then for me now, Red Dead Redemption 2 is my game of the generation last gen, like hands down.
Gotcha.
That
You
story is incredible.
I know what you mean by that click analogy that you're making because believe it or
Yeah,
not, I I owned Death Stranding for a very long time,
yeah,
and I just couldn't start the game for whatever reason. I guess I was like, look, I'm not gonna start this game because I know it's gonna be heavy into cutscenes and stuff like that. And I started playing it on Friday evening, and I guess that right now was a good time for me to start that game because I've been playing it, man, and I've been enjoying it. It's a very weird experience. I guess that's expected from a Kojima game, but there is something about that game that's clicking right now. I don't know what it is, and
Yeah.
so I kind of get what you mean by that.
Yeah, sometimes something clicks with you, sometimes it doesn't. You're right, and I think it's gotta whatever it is, has gotta give you that like want to like, oh, I can't wait to play this again because otherwise I'm gonna play whatever I'm excited to play, right? And if it's
Right.
Halo or if it's Forza or if it's like Ghost of Tsushima, which was amazing, right? I love
Yeah.
Ghost of Tsushima. There's so many great games to play that if something's not clicking and I'm not excited to go and boot it back up again, sometimes it just gets kind of left by the wayside, right?
Absolutely. And
So
if you think about it, there's a lot to play.
so
There's a
much.
lot there's a lot of things competing for our time. So that's another thing that falls into. It's not like back in the day where, the first God of War came out and it was really the only big title that was around for the whole,
Yeah.
for the whole year. So we're definitely in different times, Mav. So to finish off, to round off your 2022, a lot of big titles that you mentioned. Is there I guess what I want to ask you is where we're gonna go into some speculation, okay? So I'm kind of taking from your channel
Yes.
here,
There we
some
go.
fun
Let's go. Let's do
speculation,
this.
okay? All right.
Yep.
So
Love it.
so let's go into all three companies, man. And I mean, we don't need to go full detail or anything like that, like so long, but just give me a few things that you think that all three companies, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, are going to accomplish in 2022. Speculate on it realistically, if things that you see that could be happening, acquisitions, buying studios, games, stuff like that, even if it's a new Switch being announced, whatever it is. And let's start off with Nintendo. What do you see for where do you see all three of these companies when 2022 ends?
I think we're gonna get some bigger game announcements this year from Nintendo, that are gonna have a lot of people excited, and I think it's gonna come as a precursor to the next Nintendo thing, right? I don't know if it's gonna be a Switch 2, if it's gonna be a Switch 4K, if it's gonna be something else altogether, but I think whatever those announcements are gonna be kind of a precursor to that, and we're gonna have some excitement, major excitement again behind the future of Nintendo by the end of this year.
Are you speculating that they're going to release their system by next year or by this year?
I think the system will release next year,
Okay.
2023,
Okay. And you
and
think that they're going to
I
start?
don't know what it is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be, but they've been so like they have games, right? It's not like they don't have games. They do have games, but there's a lot of people that are just, "Oh, it's the easy thing to get for my kids. It's a family console," and then there's a couple games that everybody loves, like Smash Brothers and things like that, that keep everybody happy, you know?
Mario
But
Kart.
Mario Kart, yeah, but in a lot of ways, they're so far behind in the industry with a lot of things, including consumer, like how they um, treat their consumers with services and also the way they do their games, right? Like they don't ever drop them in price, like they hardly ever go on sale. They backwards compatibility is a service you pay for separately now,
Hmm.
right? And they are where a lot of the games that we did buy on virtual console before on the Wii and the Wii U, um, you can't play those on the Switch. Now they're all part of a service, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that they're going to make some strides at the end of the year in to consumer services, and it's going to be part of whatever this next thing for Nintendo is. And I I think it's still going to be some type of hybrid. I don't know if it's going to be a Switch 4K because a part of me thinks that like they just shelved that idea or something, because remember that was what was supposed to have been announced, and
Oh,
instead
yeah.
they came out with the Switch OLED,
Yeah, it
and
was
I don't
very, very
know.
strange. It's kind of like I don't know if the chip shortage had to do anything with them shifting their plans, but I
Yeah,
mean, the hype train was going on for a while, man.
yeah, it's very interesting. I don't. I think they've been going around trying to come up with ideas, and they have some different ideas potentially that they want to go with, and the easy option is a Switch 2. But you know how that worked out with them with the Wii U, right?
Yeah.
Marketing the same console as and then having it like people gonna know the difference too well enough and all that kind of stuff? Is it gonna kind of kill the sales of the original and all that? I think at some point the Switch is gonna kind of catch up with them a little bit because it is so behind with tech.
If I can speculate a little bit, I do think that the Switch OLED was their testing. What was their test for that? For them to see how successful a follow up Switch would be. Because if you think about it, they've kind of they announced this new Switch. It's $50 more expensive and it's sold out everywhere, man. So in a
Yep.
way, I think that this was their test to see how something like that would work.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where they go. I want them to do something different for me. Like, but if it is another handheld that is trying to be a console, then I hope they make a lot of strides with that, right? With the console functionality of it. Because for handheld gamers, it's amazing, right? For handheld gamers, it is like the best thing I think that they've ever seen before in handheld gaming.
Yeah.
But for console gamers, for me, it's a step back from the Wii U.
Yeah, and if you and I think I know where you're going with that. I think that, not to put words in your mouth or anything like that, but it sounds like if you want them to address their services, for example, having a friends list that actually works,
Yeah.
you know, making it easy so that if me and you want to play a game together, we don't have to share our social security number. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah,
Not that you have to do that
100%.
now, but I'm exaggerating, but still I think that that's kind of like where people like Nintendo fans kind of want this company to push forward and make strides in. It's just asking for features that have been around since the original Xbox.
Yeah.
I don't think that it should be that hard for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, and they kind of implement things in their own way. They always have their own way of doing things, and I don't think anybody's saying that they need to copy and do exactly what Xbox or PlayStation's doing. They can do things in a very Nintendo way.
Yeah,
But I think they just need to make some improvements with the console aspect of what they're offering, as opposed to, it being a great handheld that you can also dock and play on your TV, right? Because the all the functionality within the Switch is pretty bare bones, except for the games, right?
gotcha.
So I wanna see some improvements there, and I think whatever they come out with, I think is going to be have a very refreshing take on the Nintendo brand, and that's maybe it's wishful thinking, that I'm
No,
trying to
I
will
mean,
that into existence, right? So but
absolutely.
that'll be what I say. They're gonna announce something at the end of 22, any end of 2022 that'll be ready for 2023.
That
And
sounds awesome.
as far as PlayStation,
Hmm.
we'll get into that now. Predictions for 2022. Is that what we're doing again?
Yeah, just where do you think, do you think that Sony's going to make any acquisitions this year? Anything that you want to go to. Where do you think Sony's going to be standing at the end of 2022?
So at the end of 2022, I think that Sony is going to have made a bigger push into the subscription model service, because Spartacus is going to be a thing, and I think we're just due for an announcement relatively soon,
So
potentially at
Spartacus
another.
launches this year? You think they launch
Oh
this
yeah,
year,
yeah.
Spartacus?
Spartacus is
Okay.
coming this year, and I think that it's set to be announced probably at a state of play at some point in the next month or two. Who knows exactly
The big question,
when?
Matt, day and date. Are they going to release
Not
their
right
games
away.
day and date? No?
Not right
Okay.
away. No, not right away. But I think it will happen. I want it to happen. I think there's no reason for it not to happen,
Hmm.
right? And I also think, well, if we're talking about okay, so we're talking about Spartacus, right? So as for Spartacus, I could foresee a reason why they wouldn't do that right away, right? But as far as PC releases, I think they should release on PC day one.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the acquisitions they've been making, like these smaller acquisitions of all these smaller studios this past year, right, are all for building up the infrastructure and everything needed for this new PlayStation model to go forward,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
PlayStation Spartacus is going to be a focal point that they're going to use to compete with Game Pass. And because I think they have seen there's no stopping the future of gaming and the subscription model. So they need to get it right. And this is going to be their answer. It's not going to be a copycat of Game Pass, but it's going to be their own take on it. And we're going to see some interesting things that they're going to do differently than Game Pass. That'll be people will see a lot of value in. So I think they're going to make that a more of a focal point, and I think they're at some point they're going to announce like within the tiers that they're going to have, they're going to have potentially like their first party games releasing within a certain time window, and I could see maybe like 3 to 6 months on that, right?
That makes
Um,
sense. Yeah, that's a nice little sweet spot if they were to do that. How about if they were to offer their PC releases on this service as well?
That would be a kicker right there. If they could do that, but and that's why I think a lot of the infrastructure thing they're doing. I think they're gonna at some point need to announce a PlayStation Store for the PC,
Like a launcher.
right? Yeah, like a store launcher where you can have third party games in there, but you also have your first party games. That way, they don't have to rely on Steam and Epic for their
Yeah.
PC games because that way they're not paying another service a percentage, right, for their
That's a
PC
good
game
point.
sales. And when that
Mhm.
happens, we'll for sure be getting those day one on PC.
Okay.
So
Okay. So
we'll see when that if they are able to implement that. I think they got a long way to go for that, but we'll see. Maybe by the end of the year they could potentially pull that off. Um, but yeah, I think PlayStation's got more huge I'll make the main prediction here is they're going to surprise people with some more exclusives from third party companies.
ooh, okay. So do you think God of War releases this year?
I do think so. I know a lot of people are saying 2023. I think it's going to be ready this year.
Okay.
I think the last trailer that we saw, um, showing that it's more basically of using the same tech from the first God of War, the same engine, and they've been building upon that. And based on how polished and everything that looked in that God of War Ragnarok trailer that we saw with gameplay, uh, I don't foresee any reason why it could hit later this year.
Okay. And how about do you see them making any acquisitions as far as maybe Square Enix? Because it sounds like they're in bed. There's a lot of speculation that Square Enix only wants to release exclusives on the PlayStation brand, as well as I don't know. Maybe do you see them perhaps making an acquisition for some IP like a Metal Gear? What's this called? The horror game that we keep on hearing
The
that's going to come
Silent
out
Hill,
yeah, the Silent Hill, the one that doesn't
yeah.
doesn't go away.
I could foresee a third party deal for exclusivity on a game like that. I don't foresee them purchasing the IP. I think that just outright making a deal for them is just as valuable, right? For the game. So I could foresee that happening. I don't know if Sony's in the position to, with everything they're doing right now, to make large acquisitions like a Square Enix. All of their acquisitions have been more on the smaller side, right?
Yeah, they have. They've been
They've been
very
really
strategic.
exactly. It's very smart moves, right?
Yeah.
Very good moves. And they're kind of like, okay, what do we need to do, and what do we need to acquire? What's going to have the best impact on us for the value? And they've been making all of those types of acquisitions, and they've been reserving a lot of their money for these third party marketing deals with all of their partners,
Yeah.
and doing things like getting like a Knights of the Old Republic remake as an exclusive, right?
I know. That was
Um,
a dagger.
yeah, we're gonna see more of that kind of stuff, right? They're gonna because they don't have the amount of money that Microsoft has, and I mean nobody does, right?
Mhm.
They're going to be using the money they have to lock up exclusives using third-party deals because they can't acquire enough studios to have the amount of releases that Xbox is going to end up putting out over the course of the generation, first party wise, right? So we're
Okay.
going to see more announcements this way of like, hey, we locked up a 2 year exclusivity for something like Final Fantasy 16, even though that one does, I think, already announced as exclusive. Um, but more deals like that for sure.
I gotcha. Okay. So we're I guess that only leaves us with Xbox left. Do you see any at the end of 22 will Xbox own Sega, for example?
I don't know if they'll own Sega. Probably not any. I don't think they're gonna announce another publisher acquisition. If they do, that's absolutely bananas, right? But
Those are hard to do.
yes, very hard to do. I
Yeah.
do think that they will have more announcements on other services coming to Game Pass, potentially even beyond Ubisoft Plus. Maybe one other service, maybe like a EA Play Plus, or maybe some kind of functionality with Steam
Okay.
at some point. But besides that, Xbox, I think they are going to make a couple of studio acquisitions, and I think that a lot of the rumors that have been swirling around the last like year and a half or so is because there's noise on this stuff, and it's a lot of these things I think are actually being worked on. They just take a long time to get done before they're ready to announce, right?
Hmm.
And when they do announce these things in the past, a lot of times they've announced a bunch at once. Like we got 5 studio acquisition announcements at E3,
Oh yeah.
a couple years back. So I think that when they do announce more acquisitions for studios, they're probably going to make a couple at once, and it'll be some probably people that we're familiar with that have been working on games for them already currently.
Yeah.
Potentially like a Avalanche, a IO Interactive, could be um,
Square Enix.
Is it Square Enix? No, Square
Oh,
Enix, no,
Crystal Dynamics. I'm
Crystal
sorry.
Dynamics,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Crystal Dynamics.
Crystal Dynamics, the any of the Western developers from
Yeah.
Square, I think, are up for grabs, right? I think that Square, for some reason, is just likes to focus on the, Eastern side of things and doesn't see the success or value of their Western developers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be leasing Crystal Dynamics to Xbox, right? Like
And they wouldn't have thrown them under the bus the way that they did.
yeah. And
So
they've went on to say in the past, like, even with the success of Tomb Raider, that it was a disappointment to them, and it's, like, does way more sales than, like, a lot of the other games that they have that they find successes. It's very strange, Square.
yeah.
They're just a strange company. I think that, um, there's a lot of awesome things to look forward to regardless of what platform they come out for. I think a lot of the, um, RPGs from Square are all gonna be on PlayStation exclusive because that's just kinda how they've always been. And I think PlayStation tries to make sure that happens. Unless enough Xbox sales out there and enough people buying games on Xbox to where that market share has shifted so dramatically to where it makes doesn't make business sense for them anymore to do that, right? Which is a possibility. Other than that, I think that we'll see a couple acquisitions from Xbox for sure. And now,
Do you think that they have a number on their in their head, like where they like to be at the end of 22 with the number of studios that they have? You think that they'd like to be at an even 30, maybe something like that?
oh, I think that's what are they at now? 25,
I think 24, 25, something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah, I could foresee in, like, maybe 3 this year.
Okay.
I that's the most I would say. I Beyond that, I mean, nobody expected something like Bethesda, you know what I
No,
mean?
of course not.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I would also add that there's potential of if there was another publisher deal, there's one out there that would be, like, a huge shockwave, and that would potentially make that number explode. Um, but that's the only publisher that there's only one publisher I could foresee actually being that
Is
scenario.
that WB?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's WB Discovery,
yeah.
because I think if they made that acquisition, it would be acquiring that whole entity, that whole newly
Mhm.
created entity of WB Discovery, to create more value into Game Pass by being able to offer Discovery Plus, potentially in that service, as well as uh, I think they have um, other certain. I think they have HBO Max and stuff like even as part of their offerings and stuff. So
Okay.
I think they could potentially see but another bundle or another tier at some point of Game Pass, it's like even way higher than people expect, but it's gonna have so much value in it, it's gonna be insane. And if they do in order to get to that point, you may have to go outside of gaming, right? Drawing
Yeah.
more people, right? Okay, let this one subscription be your all access pass to gaming, TV, movies, everything. I don't know if that happens in 2022 though. That's the thing. So much has to get done with even finalizing that WB Discovery merger first for that next step to happen. So, but I do believe that's why WB Discovery thing happened in the first place was to become an entity that is more acquirable.
Yeah, and if you think
Uh,
about it, that's really it really would be their way to kind of counter maybe where Sony's going to come from. Because if you think about it, maybe part of the Spartacus subscription will have a tier that includes Crunchyroll or
yep,
Sony
exactly.
Pictures, stuff like
Sony
that.
Pictures,
So
yeah,
they do need to kind of figure out a way to combat them. Not to mention, I didn't want to get into it because you were giving your thoughts, but speaking of the Project Spartacus, don't be surprised if Sony and Netflix kind of get their own little thing going here, and that's kind of what Spartacus is. It's this marriage between Netflix and PlayStation. Not to go back to
yeah,
PlayStation, but to to kind of round things off, Microsoft had to kind of be anticipating all of these moves.
yeah. Well, that's why I was saying I think Spartacus will be very different from Game Pass, but then also be their answer to it. Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be a copycat to be their answer. All it needs to do is provide it a good amount of value, right?
absolutely.
It needs to give a good amount of value and have games at the forefront. And I think a lot of the rumblings going on right now is I think that's where they're going. And they see the value in subscriptions. They like all these big businesses do, right? And if they can get that
Absolutely.
subscription model right, then they're going to have a lot of success. And they have a lot to offer, right? With that
Yes, they
library
do.
that they have, but they got to get it operating properly um, with all the back compat and everything. And I think that's some of the reasons they've been making the acquisitions that they have, right? So,
Great.
and I think it all makes sense for them, and I'm excited to see this future unfold for PlayStation if that's so happens. But we'll see. They could just be like run the same way they always have. Who knows? It's all speculation, right? But I think the man,
Fun speculation,
yeah,
Mav.
I
Fun
can't
speculation.
wait. Like the question is for me is like, what event will Xbox announce acquisitions?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing's for certain, right? All of these companies, they definitely have us excited. Gaming is healthy as it's ever been. We look forward to the news on Monday, to that news dropping throughout the week. So they definitely have us, man. And I think that all companies are doing great things.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, brother. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts and giving me all the feedback and all the information, Mav, that you have tonight. It's been great. We've gone over an hour and a half here, and where can people find you next, Mav? What's your next show you got lined up?
So today's what? Today's Sunday, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, tomorrow we'll have tidbits where we look at the games coming out for the week ahead. We're gonna have a blast with Fuzzy. I don't know exactly what time we do tidbits. It depends on what times become available throughout the day for us. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of one we just kind of do randomly, right, on a Monday. And then after that, we got Wednesdays Fun Pop podcast, Thursdays PM in the PM, Fridays uh Xbox Ultimate with the Great Eight is what they're calling it now. And then Saturdays FSP. But you can also check me out on Tuesdays on the Xbox Factor podcast with Mr. Boomstick.
Oh yeah.
And that's at 11 12 Eastern. 12 Eastern time, 12 p.m. And so we'll have lots of fun. We have lots of fun on that show as well. So yeah, that's where you can all check me out. And I'll maybe playing some games tonight. I may be streaming some games tonight. So we'll see.
Some Halo. Do you want to end it, Mav, with maybe a 2022 prediction? Any Halo content dropping for the story in
Ooh.
2022?
Oh man. Okay, so I think there will be story DLC hitting at the end of 2022 for Halo.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. And I think it'll be part of this service that we're going to have over Halo Infinite over the next decade. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to continue to evolve. We're going to get more story information. And we're also going to get new modes, new maps, all these things. Like Halo's a platform.
Oh
Halo
yeah.
Infinite is a platform, right? And I think we're going to see a little bit about how more that's all going to come together. And I think it's probably going to happen sometime around when the season 2 content hits in May. They're probably going to make some announcements around that time about the future. about season 3 and beyond.
Definitely. I could definitely see that happening. Well, Mav, I wish you well, man. I hope you have a fantastic 2022. Nothing but well wishes for you and your family. Your channel's doing fantastic, man. All the content that you guys are making there is super entertaining and super fun to watch. Thank you again for coming on the very second episode of the Wolfpack
Yeah.
Gaming Podcast. If you ever need a fill in or anything, Mav, you can hit me up, man. I'll be glad to join
Yeah,
one of
right
your
on,
many
dude, for sure.
shows. And again, man, I thank you so much and have fun in 2022, man. There's going to be so much to play. And yeah, man, for sure. We got to do this again.
Yeah, they definitely do anytime. Yeah, and we'll have you on one of our shows for sure, dude. I'll hit you up.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Thanks
good
for having me.
evening. Have fun tonight playing Halo if you're going to be playing, right? You're going to be streaming?
Yeah, probably either Halo or I need to finish Guardians. So I might
Oh,
finish
gotcha.
Guardians.
Yep.
Another great game. I don't know. I gotta decide. I don't know what it's gonna be. Lots of
And
stuff to choose
whatever,
from.
brother, whatever you decide, it's going to be good, man. So
Yeah,
I wish you
exactly.
well.
Yep.
I wish you well, man. Have a very positive and a great week coming up. Okay.
Yeah, you too, man. You have a good one. Thank you.
Take care, brother.